I'm Mike Thomas, President of Kiwi Indian Motorcycle Company. We're going to show the disassembly of rear shock assembly from 1940 to 1953. Here we have the rear shock tool. And this is going to thread in to the lower end of the shock. Just remember, it's got a thread into the lower end. You can get plenty of threads into the plunger shaft itself. This is going to be under a lot of pressure, so we don't want it to strip out. So once you get it to that point, you actually put a wrench, hold one here, and then turn this nut here. And what it's going to do is going to compress. It's going to compress the springs in here. So then we'll be able to get the guts out here. Next up is to remove the snap ring. Just get a screwdriver under it. Pry it up. Snap ring has a tab on it. Let's see, it's got to come out of that hole over yonder. So there's a groove that it sits down into. So just remove that. Remove the spring retaining nut. We made up this special little tool, the little dogs on it, that'll locate into the grooves here. A lot of people just use a screwdriver. This is a little bit brutal, so unwind that all the way up. And then you've got the springs down there. Remove the shock tool, and then that will release all the pressure on all the internal springs, and then you can pull them out. And this is not unusual. Top one's broken. This one's very well broken, multiple times. So even if your shock springs are okay, always replace the uppers. The lower ones are a heavy duty one. You can see the difference there. But this is the upper, what it should look like. They're notorious for breaking, so automatically replace them. This video is to show the assembly of 1946 to 1953 rear shocks. It's actually going to be the same steps and process as 1940 to 45. Just 1945, well, 1940 to 45, they used heavier shock springs and a different plunger. So 1946 to 53, you've actually got a lower tension upper, almost the same tension lower. The difference is in the plungers as well. You see this one here actually has a recess in it, and this spring here is tapered, so it's smaller at this end, larger at this end. So the smaller end actually is going to fit down into the cup. This is 1940 to 45. It does not have any recess in here, and this piece here is in a different location. So you don't want to mix and match. Bodies are the same. That doesn't matter. It's just if you're using later model springs, you got to use later model plunger, which later model we call 46 to 53. And if you're using the earlier one, you got to use 40-45 plunger and 40 to 45 springs. And this here is the tools that we'll be using. This is the compression tool, and then we've made this special tool for putting on the top nut. So we'll go through the process. Use plenty of grease. Grease is your best friend here. There's a bushing in the bottom here. Just make sure that that's in good condition, otherwise you're going to get some speed wobbles. And there's another bushing that's fitted to the upper retainer. So just make sure those bushings are in good condition. This all affects the handling of the bike. Just remember, grease is your best friend. Just use it on everything to smother the springs. Just don't be scared. It's not tapered, so it can go in either way. I'm not putting a whole bunch of grease in here. It's just I got to operate the video camera a little bit messy. Next up is the plunger shaft. Then we've got the upper spring, which is tapered, small end, large end. The small end goes down into the cup. And we've got to compress the spring. This is the shock tool. I'll have to turn this around to show you how this goes. Hopefully everything doesn't fall out. The shock tool, what you're going to do, this end here screws into the bottom of the plunger. Screw it in quite a bit, because you don't need this thing popping out under pressure. And you've got the adjusting nut. Use the tool to compress the spring. The spring should be down below the threaded surface. And what we got, I've marked there with a marker pen. There's you can see a little hole there. That's for the snap ring to locate in after we're all done. And also mark where the hole is in here. This hole, when we're done, has to line up perfectly with this hole in the body. Through that on, we've made up this little tool here. Just makes it a little bit easier. Thread that all the way in until the top of this is about level with that. So thread this retainer in until it's about level with the top of the body. If you don't have shock covers on, you can just put it through here and just make sure it lines up. We'll do a little dummy fit like that, like so. But the reason why I mark them, because if you do have the chrome cover on here, you won't be able to see that hole. So just a matter of shoving that in there. That's what she said. And just make sure the snap ring, the little ear, is all the way in. Properly home. The rest of it will sit in the groove and the retainer. And the last step would be to back off the shock tool. Quite often, not all the time, but usually you have to put another wrench on here, but generally just one wrench does the trick. Remove the rear shock tool just by unscrewing it like so. Just to go over the compression of the tool during installation, since the other shot mightn't be so clear, is you're screwing this part into the shaft, probably at least 1/2 inch, 3/4 even better, and then tighten up this nut here, and that'll compress all the springs here. Now once you're done, make sure that snap ring is sitting down in the hole, and then the snap ring itself sits in a groove. So just make sure all the way around that snap ring is sitting, nestling down into its groove. Before fitting the upper cover to the body, I like to put a bevel on here. That facilitates starting a little bit easier. Shock bodies vary quite a bit in diameter, just during old time manufacturing, and the covers vary a little bit too. So that's why putting a bevel on there helps out. I also apply a little bit of oil. There's actually two surfaces that are raised up that the cover slides over. There's this part here and this part here. Down this area here is lower. So just do a nice little bevel on here and put the cover on. Sometimes the cover will actually fit a little bit better one way than the other, as you can see. So it's a little tougher that way. Just turn around the other way. This one's actually quite nice. Sometimes they really make you struggle. Easy way to make, you gotta be careful beating on the chrome. With a soft hammer, you can just beat on the edge here. Or you can put several layers of duct tape down on a vise. And then just, there's different strokes for different folks. End result's the same. What you want to do is make sure the cover is seated all the way down on the body. Prior to doing this, make sure that you get rid of any of the powder coat or paint. You want just a straight metal surface here. This one here is the lower cover. Goes on the lower part of the body. Once again, put a little bevel on here. That makes fitting easier, and apply a little bit of oil to that ridge. Also make sure it's free of powder coat or paint. You want it down to the middle surface, and it's going to go on like so. Then you can sit it on here and just tap on the top part of this body here. This is a tool I made up for assisting to put it on rear shock covers. The side here locates over the shaft, and you put the cover on like so. Put some duct tape down first, protect the chrome, and that way you can either tap on the body with a soft hammer or put it in a press and press down. Just put a spud over the top and press down. Put the other cover on. This end here goes in like so. Okay, it's in. And once again, put duct tape down on here, and then tap on here with a soft hammer, or once again make a spud that comes down, presses on the body. When everything's said and done, this gap here is even all the way around. All the way around the body, the gap between the body and the cover is to be even. That's important. Just make sure it's seating all the way down. The other order of putting shock covers on is doing the covers first, right before putting in the guts. It just depends, different strokes for different folks, but that's another way to do it. This is a tool I made up for assisting to put it on rear shock covers. The side here. In 1940, Indian introduced rear shocks on the Chief model. This is showing the progression of the strengthening on the right side shock housings. The left all remain the same, but the right side went through several progressions. This one here be around, there's no documentation on this stuff. So the best I can determine, this is 1940, and it was rather weak through here. So if we go over to 1944 and later, you can actually see it's quite a bit stronger. They've added material all the way along here. so it's a lot thicker through here versus 1940 issue one. So at a pretty good guess, I would say Indian used this one 1940, may have ran it into 1941. This is probably coming out, this one in 1941, and it's got a strengthening rib along it. You can actually see the strengthening rib along here. In 1944, and I've got several new old stock, or I've had original bikes of 1944, and they all had this one on it. They carried this one from 1944 through to 1953. We've gone from the very weak one to the ribbed to the strengthened.